Hello healers and health seekers, it's me Ichota, healing with medical medium information for 3 years now. 3 years, just over 3 years actually, about a month over. And what am I healing from? Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, mast cell activation disorder, POTS dysautonomia, multiple chemical sensitivity, hypothyroid, migraines, PCOS, SIBO, systemic exertion intolerance disorder, chronic fatigue syndrome, and so many more things. I felt like a diagnosis collector before I started on this journey. So if you want to know more about that and more about what I'm healing from, the list is longer than what I just said. I just did some videos a while back about what symptoms I've healed in the past 3 years, and the list was over 116 symptoms long. I could not believe it. Holy moly, it surprised even me. I was like, wow, I didn't realize I had this many symptoms, because a lot of them you just don't pay attention to as much as the major stuff, like the pain, the chronic pain. And anyway, that's in the description box below if you want to watch. But today I'm here to talk about my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because I made those 3 videos and I forgot to talk about some of the major symptoms of my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, in particular subluxations that have healed. So I'm going to talk about it now. I did not know that I had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome my whole life, even though I had so many symptoms, because quite honestly, it didn't even really become a diagnosis until the past, I don't know, decade, 15 years. I don't even know how long it's been an official diagnosis, because nobody ever looked at my connective tissue before. I had postural issues. I couldn't hold myself upright, and I had a lot of pain in my back because I had no core strength, couldn't hold myself upright, and I would sublux all the time. I grew up around chiropractors, so I trusted chiropractic as a method. Just so you know, in case you have EDS, well, you know if you have EDS and you're saying this right now, like, what are you kidding me? Chiropractors are not safe for people with EDS. They usually can cause a lot more damage. And you know what? Maybe they did. Maybe they did. Because I didn't know. I didn't know I had it. I didn't know I had it until I got this concussion in 2012, and that is the backstory of when my health really tanked, is after that concussion and also a mold exposure right before it. Holy moly. And then my health just went whoosh, and that is when I really started searching for answers. And part of my search for answers, because the doctors didn't seem to have answers, I did so much of my own research that it became a full-time job. And I think probably a lot of you with chronic illness have the same story, basically. Like, I had to do my own research. I had to be my own advocate. I had to be the one. And how do you do that when you're chronically ill and you have no spoons and you're just fatigued and you can't think straight because you have so much brain fog? And how do you do it? I don't know, but you do it. I don't know. You do it, because that's what you have to do, because the doctors don't generally have a lot of answers. And it's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's the system that they are required to work within. It's just how it is. So I did track down a doctor who was a geneticist and a pathologist, and he had like 7 or 9 other degrees. I don't even remember the number now. I think it was 9, which I'm like, how does any person, human, even have 9 degrees? But he did, because he had the smarts. So he was serious. But he and his family had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so he was very invested in learning about it and knowing about it. And I thought, this is the guy. He's going to give me the answers. And I tracked him down. I figured out, like, I've got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I just need to get the diagnosis. But I wanted to get the diagnosis from the person who really understood it and who could tell me all about it and what caused it and how we could heal it and all this stuff. This is what I had in my head was going to happen, even though every other doctor I'd go to would give me a diagnosis, and I'd say, great, okay, I have the diagnosis. So what's the root cause of this? How do we heal it? And they'd go, oh, I don't know. I can give you some pills to offset your symptoms and to suppress your symptoms. And I was like, well, I don't want that. I want to heal. I want to get better. Like, I don't just want to take pills so I don't know that I have symptoms. And they were like, sorry, that's all we can do, you know, and they didn't, and oftentimes, quite frankly, they just didn't know what to do with me because my system was so sensitive from the mast cell activation disorder and the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that I couldn't handle any pharmaceuticals. I would react to every single thing I took. I would get all kinds of, you know, if there was a side effect, I'd have it. I took one ketotifen one time for my mast cell activation disorder. Prescribed me ketotifen. Now, I had to get all my medications compounded. And so I took my prescription to the compounding pharmacy. I gave it to the pharmacist. They filled the prescription, all compounded, totally safe, no fillers, no nothing in it, nothing that I would react to except the drug itself. And I took it and I had violent reactions to it. Violent, like rage and violence, and I wanted to hurt things and people, and it was bad. And I was like, I am not taking that. One pill, you guys, one pill. So I called up the pharmacist and I said, I took it and this happened. And he said, what? That's not a, hold on. He looked it up. It took him 15 minutes of like, I don't know what materials pharmacists, like the book that they have or everything, drug interactions. And he said, oh, that is a really, really rare side effect of ketotifen is like psychological, or I'm sorry, like neurological. I don't remember what he said. Anyway, he said that is a really, really rare side effect of ketotifen. And yeah, okay, that happened. And he's like, I will note that and talk to your doctor about it. And I was like, yeah, okay. I'm like, well, leave it to me to have the most rare side effect of any drug, because it was really hard for me to take any pharmaceuticals because my body is smart. And it was like, no, I reject this. Give me fruits and vegetables. And I was like, I don't know what you're saying. I have too much brain fog. Anyway, I'm just being silly right now. So I had a really hard time taking any pharmaceuticals, and that is part of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. You have to be super careful. Like, we can't really have surgeries because our connective tissue is so thin, it's hard to like sew it back together or whatever. But B, we react to like, okay, it's allergic to antibiotics, narcotics, NSAIDs, and alcohol. That's the last one. I was allergic to alcohol. Okay. In my 20s, I sure didn't know I was allergic to alcohol. In my teens and 20s, I had no idea, and I drank, and things would happen, and I would always be like, oh, I got so drunk. But what really happened is I was so allergic to alcohol, and it went too far into my brain. It didn't work out. Anyway, I didn't learn that until way later, and then when I figured it out, I stopped drinking, obviously. I mean, I think I stopped drinking actually before I figured it out, because I was like, the consequences of me drinking are not worth me drinking. Yeah, so allergic to those things. So also undergoing surgery, a lot of the anesthetic that they use, either we are resistant to it or it causes like really extra side effects for people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So that was another thing to be concerned about when people would say, oh, well, we just need to like do a surgery and sew this back together. It'd be like, well, we have to do some serious research. For example, when my son underwent some dental surgery, because he also has the same connective tissue issues and he was having issues with his teeth because of it. So I waited until an age that I thought was a little safer. Like, I wouldn't do it when he was little, but when he got older, I did. We had some dental work done, and it was under anesthesia, and I had a whole ongoing relationship with this anesthesiologist because we spoke so much to each other. We were so much back and forth about the anesthesia because I was like, we got to do this the safest way possible. So I did my research. I spent so much time researching anesthesia and the effects and what could be okay with people with connective tissue issues and what was the safest and what had the least amount of side effects and blah, 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 blah. And we just were like texting back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Is interesting because I don't think that happens very often in his job, if ever, that somebody gets so involved in his process. And I was so involved. I'm like, I want to know everything that you're thinking of using, and then I'm going to research it, and then I'm going to tell you alternatives, basically, which is what happened. And he was totally willing to work with that, which I was so grateful for. So yeah, so we did it, and we used him, and it was fine. It all worked out really well. Whew, you just got to be super careful when you have EDS. Anyway, so that's one of the things that I had to do all the time. So I found this geneticist after all this research, and actually I was sort of in a think tank of chronically ill people who were really into researching their particular illness, and we compared notes, and we were also in the same geographic location area generally. And so we found him, and we were like, he's the holy grail of the EDS diagnosis, and he'll have all these resources and blah, 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 blah. And it cost so much to see him. And so we did it. I went to see him, and I got the diagnosis. Yes, you are super hyper flexible. You're hypermobile. And he said I was probably somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, which, cannot imagine. I had so much chronic pain. I cannot imagine being on the full end of the spectrum where you have like so much. And I definitely have a cousin who is more to that end of the spectrum, and she's had so many surgeries. It's brutal. So I feel like I was fortunate because my symptoms were, I would sublux, like my subluxations were not so much in my shoulders, but in my, like the middle of my back would sublux all the time. It would always go out. And then other parts of my back, and a little bit my shoulders, but not as much. However, with the chronic fatigue syndrome and the systemic exertion intolerance disorder and the mast cell activation disorder, I guess, like when I ran out of gas and I just couldn't anything anymore, and my energy units and ability to do anything started being measured in spoons, which if you haven't read the spoon theory, I'll link that below. But when it got to that point, I couldn't walk anymore. I couldn't hold myself upright. I couldn't stand for more than 5 minutes. I had so much chronic pain in my body, and everything was just sort of coming apart. Basically, it felt like everything was coming apart. I had weakness. I just was too weak to do anything. And I just had no gas in the tank, so I just couldn't, like, any physical effort, like taking a shower or washing dishes or preparing food was just like days. It would take days out of me, and I couldn't. So I needed a wheelchair to get around because I still had to go to doctor's appointments. And so they gave me a wheelchair and said, oh, you're permanently disabled, so here's your, parking. You can get a parking pass so that you can park in the handicap spots. I couldn't walk anywhere. I couldn't really do anything. Like I could walk a little bit around my house, but not very far. Really not very far. Like to the bathroom. That was about it. Or to the kitchen from the sofa. Not far. Those were hard times. So I got to see this doctor, and I'm thinking, yeah, he's going to be the guy. He's going to be the one. He's going to tell me how to heal this. He's going to tell me the root cause because his family has it. He has a vested interest. He's been doing this research for 30 years. He knows his stuff. He is got all these degrees. He is so smart. He knows. He's going to know. He's going to know. He's studied all these fields that have led him to this crux where he has found the root cause. I was so excited to see him. And he did have a lot of information on genetics and all this stuff. But guess what? When I said to him, great, I have the diagnosis. I'm hypermobile EDS. What is the root cause and how do we heal it? And he said, oh, I don't know that. And I thought, what? 30 years of research and you haven't figured out the root? Like, I thought that was your whole, what are we doing here? Like, well, then what do I do? Well, then what's the treatment? And he's like, oh, I don't do treatment. I just do diagnosis. And I was like, what? I couldn't even grok this. Like, what, how? Really? Okay. So, what am I going to do? Honestly, I didn't know what to do. I did connect with doctors who did the treatment, and then a physical therapist who also had EDS, so she understood what it was like, and she specialized in it, and she, you know, worked with me, and I could barely move, so our sessions were like, honestly, most of the exertion of the session was me even getting there. Getting in the car and being driven there by my husband, and then sitting and waiting, and then doing the session. Like, it was just so exhausting. And after a while, honestly, I couldn't even go because I couldn't handle the building that it was in. It was a gym, and it was a lot of chemical scents and smells, and like new yoga mats and things like that, off-gassing. It was all too much for me to handle with the mast cell activation disorder. I couldn't handle all that, and the multiple chemical sensitivity. So symptoms I had, just talking about, like I said, I had the subluxations, and I made the mistake of going to chiropractors for years and years for them until I just couldn't anymore. I just couldn't go out of my house anymore and go to chiropractors. And we were kind of looking at an electric wheelchair, and we were looking at home health, because that was what I was capable of. Like, I couldn't really leave the house anymore, and it was getting worse and worse, and it was getting to that point where it was like home health. But I needed to go to the doctor to get written up for home health, like to get the recommendation. And that was a whole thing, and it was like, again, it's too much. I couldn't. Oh, and I talked about the muscle weakness, like how I had no strength in my muscles, and I have always had very velvety skin, which I didn't even know was the thing. Like, I didn't know that other people didn't have velvety skin, except I guess my boyfriends, if I would touch their skin and I would be like, your skin's really rough, and they were like, no, yours is really soft. So I got told over the years, I started to learn, like, oh, I have velvety skin that most people don't have. Like, other people's skin just feels different. But I didn't know. Obviously, the hypermobility, I've always been very bendy and stretchy and able to get into positions that not most people can't. And my thumbs do this, and my fingers do this, and that's, I guess, not most people can't do that. And I don't know. It wasn't a lot for me. Like, I just thought this is like the way my body, like, I didn't know that there was another way to be. Like, this is the way my body is. And when people couldn't bend the way I could, I was like, really? I learned over the years again. I had pain. I had pain in my ankles. I had pain in my knees. I had pain in my hips. I had pain in my back and my shoulders. I had pain for like 25, 30 years. I had pain in my back. I just thought, this is my body. I just have this back pain all the time. And I know that other people don't, but I do. And I don't know. I figured it was like because of the car accidents I was in when I was in my 20s and teens. I was not the driver. I just chose poorly of who would be the driver, I guess. But each time I would be in a car accident, I would hurt my back. That's what I would end up hurting. Except for like the really bad one where my whole body got scarred up and I went through a windshield. But that's another video. Okay. Oh yes. My ankles would roll because of my connective tissue was not strong enough to support my ankles, and they would just roll when I was walking. I never hurt myself like doing any super physically active, whatever, athletic thing. It was always just like, I'm walking along on the sidewalk and then my ankle rolled. Or I'm walking into the building from the trampoline where we were out with the kids, and then my ankle rolled. I fractured my ankle 3 times. My ankles, I fractured one of them twice and one of them once, obviously, because that's how 3 works. When it's 2 ankles. And I sprained my ankle a couple other times, and yeah, they would just roll. It was not fun. And another symptom that I had with, and I did talk about this a little bit, but I'm just going to talk about symptoms relative to my EDS, is that my hands like would get arthritic. And I had arthritis in my neck as well. Like, that was kind of, my hands would feel arthritic, I should say, because of my connective tissue being all stretchy and coming out of place. Like, my fingers would wiggle out of place, and my thumbs and stuff like that, like, it was so, writing became painful, and drawing became painful, and knitting and sewing became painful. Like, little stuff, beadwork, anything that I would do that was small with my hands. And I do all those things. I love to draw, I love to write, I love to sew, I love to knit, I love to do beadwork, and I couldn't anymore. Also, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, it affects your connective tissue, affects your eyesight. And so, interestingly though, in the area that I was in, there was an ophthalmologist who was very fascinated with and specialized in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and he had all this really fancy equipment, and I think that's kind of part of the reason that he wanted to have patients with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, is because then he got to play with his equipment. Because it was very specialized equipment. Like, you wouldn't just be somebody who had like kind of regular macular degeneration coming in. He wouldn't have as much reason to use that equipment. But anyway, he was working with the university there, so that's why he had that equipment. And yeah, so I was lucky because I got to see an eye doctor who specialized in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and he was fascinated with my case and, you know, any of us who had it, because he was like, oh, I get to study more of this. And I don't remember what he told me. I think he did say something like some of my macular degeneration had to do with the connective tissue issues, and I think he gave me sort of a prognosis of what to expect in the future, and I'm sorry that I don't remember it right now. I do have the record, but my son is asleep and I can't go dig it out. So yeah, so I got to see all these specialists and physical therapists and stuff like that, and was working with them until I couldn't anymore, because it did get to the point where I just couldn't go out and I couldn't do anything. And then I found the Medical Medium first book, Medical Medium: Secrets Behind Chronic and Mystery Illness and How to Finally Heal. And I was able to read it despite the brain fog. I had like a little lucid moment or whatever, a lucid day. And I was able to read it, and I started implementing the information just little by little, like what I was capable of doing, like a little bit of, I was like, okay, I'm just going to try to do the celery juice. That's what I'm going to do. Because I didn't really think that I was capable of doing more, but I just knew this is what I had to do, because I just felt every cell in my body just felt it. Like, I just felt like this is the answer. I felt like a shift when I was reading the book. I felt like, okay, I'm on the right track now. Finally, after so many years of being on the wrong track and following all of this information because I thought it was the cutting edge science, and I didn't realize that it was backed by funding, and that there was a financial interest in this information. Whereas with Medical Medium, there's not. With Medical Medium, it's from an untampered with source. He's not being funded. He's not being backed. He actually spends a lot of his own money just to get the information out there. He's not really making very much money, but it's all about our healing. His whole entire life is dedicated to our healing, and that's amazing. Like, nobody else has to live a life like that. Like, everybody else gets to go home at the end of the day and shut it off and, you know, not have to think about things and not have to be a part of it. But Anthony William has spirit in his ear 24/7, always, always, always telling him everybody's health issues. Always, if a plane goes overhead, he hears everybody's health issues in the plane. If he's on a plane, he hears everybody's health issues in the plane. Hi. Hi, baby. If he's in a store or in a room or anywhere where there's people or anywhere in any proximity of any people, he's bombarded 24/7 with spirit just telling him everybody's health problems. Just telling him everybody's health problems. It's a lot. It's a lot. I can't imagine what it must be like to live with that 24/7. His whole life is just dedicated to helping us heal. Like, he doesn't get to turn it off. It's not like other people who call themselves mediums. Hi, baby. It's not like other people who call themselves mediums, because those people get to shut it off if they want to. They can go have a vacation. They can go take a day off. They can go do something. But 24/7, when Medical Medium was seeing clients, 24/7, he's got spirit in his ear. 24/7, he's seeing people. He would get up at 3 a.m. to help a person, a client. He would, you know, sometimes mamas with their sick kids would be calling him at 3 a.m. and he would be there. He would be like, okay, let's take care of this. He saw people day and night. You know, he barely got any sleep, and he still barely gets any sleep because he's writing the books, and it's just amazing. It's just amazing what he goes through just to get this information out there so that we can heal. Nobody else can make that claim. Nobody else does that. Nobody else has to give up and sacrifice any kind of semblance of a normal life since a child. He's had that voice in his ear since he was 4. He never got to have a normal childhood or a normal teenage life or anything like that. You know, who else would? Nobody else is doing that. Everybody else is just making money. Just how can they make a buck, you know? I feel like that's important. That's important because it's just like, you know, the information is purer this way. You know, he could make so much money. So many people are making money off of him, and he isn't. He's not. He's not making the money, they are. Okay, so then I got on the medical medium path, and things started to change. Things started to turn around. And I know a lot of people aren't going to believe me when I say this, but connective tissue can heal. And Ehlers-Danlos isn't what we've been led to believe it is. It actually is healable. I have noticed in my own body that things have started to heal, and I have started to feel very much stronger in my core and very much stronger in my body, and the weakness went away, and the subluxations have really slowed, if not stopped. And this is just in 3 years of healing, after literally a lifetime of struggling with this, of struggling with connective tissue issues and not ever being able to sit up straight or even hold myself upright, having to always brace myself and lean on things. But it's healing. It's healing. And my hands, I can write again, I can sew, I can draw, I can touch paper, that was something that I talked about in the other symptom healing videos, is that I couldn't touch paper, but I can touch paper and I can draw and I can write, and there's no pain, and I can sew and I can knit. I have been able to knit and all of that with no pain. I can't really do the beadwork because the beadwork is too small for my eyeballs. But I can do all the other things, and it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. And I can do it without pain, because I love to journal, I love to write, I love to draw, all these things with my hand that requires fine motor skills. That was just, it would hurt before, and it doesn't hurt anymore. I'm so happy about that. I'm not as flexible as I once was. I don't think that's because of healing. I think that's also because sometimes when you get older with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and I'm over 40, sometimes you lose some of that flexibility. But also, I haven't done any yoga or anything like that that would continue my flexibility. But my ankles feel a lot stronger. I don't have any pain in my knee. I don't have any pain in my back. Most of the time, I don't have pain between my shoulder blades. I just don't get those subluxations. I do still have velvety skin. I like that symptom. I'm getting my muscle strength back, I'm getting stronger, and I'm getting more able to do things, and it's pretty amazing when you really do learn the root cause of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because there is one. There is a root cause, and it's Epstein-Barr virus. It's not, well, nobody's ever said a root cause in the world of medicine before, and it's not what they think, though. It's not genetic. It's really true that that stuff can be turned on and off. It can be healed. Epstein-Barr virus can be healed with the right information and the right foods and the right supplements and the right herbs and the right meditations and the right movement and talking to the angels and all of that. It can heal. It really can heal. And I'm feeling it. Like, I'm feeling my connective tissue rebuilding, and I'm feeling it being stronger. I'm being stronger in my body and able to do things that I couldn't do before, and it's pretty friggin' amazing, actually. I call it a miracle, honestly, because I was on kind of what I almost would consider my deathbed. Like, I was so miserable. I had nothing. I had no sort of a life. I had just an existence, and it was like a miserable existence, and I was just going further and further into darkness and further into just, I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, I did know what was going to happen, actually. Like, I was on a kind of a fast track to being at the end of my life, and medical medium information has brought me back, and that whole big list of 115 or whatever symptoms, everything has a very much at least improved. Some things are still healing for sure, but if you want to watch those videos, you'll see a lot of it has just gone away, and some things are still healing, but everything's improved, and it's just been freaking miraculous, and it's been just an upward trajectory. Healing is not linear. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and then, squiggles and circle lines and all this stuff in between, but ultimately moving forward. And it's been such an incredible gift, and I am so grateful to have found the medical medium information and to be healing, because I tried all the things that I knew to try, that I found in my research to try before, and none of that stuff worked. Nothing helped. Drugs certainly didn't help what I could even take. I mean, nothing helped. Nothing. And diet and food, when you don't have all the information about the food, diet and food only took me so far, and then they actually took me further into sickness, and they took me further into descent into what I call my personal hell, because it was just, because I was eating paleo and then autoimmune paleo. I've tried so many ways of eating before I got to that. But then I got to paleo and autoimmune paleo and like low FODMAP autoimmune paleo, and then I had like 12 foods, if that I could eat. It was bad. And now I can eat what I want to eat. I'm not eating foods that feed my pathogens, and that's by choice, because I don't like the way it feels when I feed the pathogens in my body, and I feel a lot worse, and it tanks my health. But I know now why. I understand why these foods help and why these foods hinder and what's going on. And knowledge is power. It really is. If you have the right information, and it really makes a difference. It makes such a difference. So that, my friends, is the story of healing symptoms of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for coming along on this journey with me. I love you. I appreciate you. I just want to thank you. Thank you. If you like this video, give a thumbs up below. You can subscribe to my channel by hitting that subscribe button over there. That's a bug. I'm just kidding. You can hit the subscribe button down there. You can ding the bell next to it if you want to be notified when I post a new video. And I wish you so many blessings on your continued healing, my healers and health seekers. Stay curious, and I will see you next time. I love you. Mwah. Bye-bye.